Welcome to this video about interview skills for faculty positions and for fellowships, brought to you by the University of Cambridge Career Service as part of our Career Essentials series for researchers. In this video, we'll describe what you need to be communicating to the selection panel in your academic interview. So we're going to do this by looking at 4 different topics. First, we're going to think about what the purpose of the interview is and think about what the panels are actually looking for. Second, we'll talk a little bit about what the interview will be like. And third, we'll think through what the selectors might be asking, including how you can predict likely questions. And finally, we'll think about how you can present yourself and how to prepare for questions by assessing how you should structure your achievements and present yourself to leave interviewers with a concise impression of who you are and what you have to offer. So first, what are the selectors looking for? Now, what does the panel for a faculty position look for? Interviews are, to a certain extent, quite predictable. Hiring committees for faculty positions are typically assessing these areas. First, your research excellence, your potential to become a research leader, that potential being based on your track record and your ideas and how your research has had a contribution to the field so far. You need to show you're making an impact on your field and that your future research and funding plans are coherent. You'll be speaking about the specifics of why your work is significant, not just running through a list of your publications. Second, they'll be assessing how you show you prioritize the development of others, including specifically through teaching. They're assessing not only what you've taught, but how you teach, how you show your enthusiasm and understanding of what teaching is, and how you have that ability to think about maximizing the potential of others. Finally, they're going to be looking at whether you're a good academic citizen. So this means a range of activities from outreach to being a good colleague, and then engaging in activities beyond your own research and teaching. The particular focus of what you emphasize here will vary depending on the focus of the role. Importantly, at interview stage, they're assessing whether you'd be a good colleague. So you might be surprised that the questions are not going to be all about your research only. A survey involving 22 UK higher education institutions, and which elicited 172 responses, found that by the time a candidate reaches interview for a lectureship, future colleagues are looking for departmental fit and for someone who will pull their weight in terms of teaching and administration. By the time you get to interview, they know you're an excellent researcher. They want to know whether they could work with you, potentially until retirement. So part of the purpose of the interview is to ensure they can trust that you'll do the work of being a good colleague well. Fellowship panels will want to assess whether you're the right person for the project. They'll be testing whether your research proposal is realistic given the time frame. Overambitious projects can be marked down, so ideally you'll want to have some achievable aims and some that are more risky and will have contingency plans in place. And they'll want to know that your host institution is the best place for your research and that you will get the necessary training and mentorship to become a group leader. Fellowship panels will want to assess whether you're the right person for the project. They will be testing whether your research proposal is realistic given the time frame. Overambitious projects can be marked down, so ideally you will have some achievable aims and some that are more risky, and will have contingency plans in place. And they will want to know that your host institution is the best place for your research, and that you'll get the necessary training and mentorship to become a group leader. What will the interview be like? Interviewing for a faculty position, whether it's a lectureship or a group leader position, might involve a range of steps: panel interviews, meetings with other members of faculty, presenting your past research, talking about your future research, giving a student lecture or part of one. Outside of pandemics, you might even have meals with staff or other candidates. All sorts of people you encounter in the course of the interview might be asked for their impressions, including administrative staff and students, so keep that in mind as well. It's important to try to find out what the plan is for the interview day, or even potentially more than one day. What to expect on the day for fellowship interviews? These will typically be large panels, most of whom will not be specialists. They'll be short interviews with questions mainly focused on your research proposal. Usually you'll have to give a short presentation of 5 minutes, often with no slides. They may use the referee's comments or your responses as questions. So for example, the referees will be specialists, so you can expect questions like, what will you do if aim number 1 doesn't work? Or why do you intend to use methodology X rather than Y? Won't Dr. A be a competitor? The process will differ between funders, so make sure that you check the requirements carefully. What might the selectors ask? Predicting questions. Try to get inside the head of your interviewers. We know that they're interested in you in terms of your research, teaching, and so they'll structure their questions around this. Review what was said in the advertisement or job description. What about your application materials might not be convincing to them? We ask postdocs to let us know the questions that they've been asked at interview, and the same ones come up time and again. You can ask whether we have feedback relating to a particular institution or fellowship. The pooled results are in our quick guide, which you can find via our website. There's also a blog post on the Postdoc Career Service blog, which looks at questions from some former postdocs, which they said that they dreaded. So getting inside the heads of your interviewers, as I mentioned, try to think about where they're coming from and what are their concerns. Who is on the interview panel and what's their background? Talk to people and try to find some more things out about the department or about the panel, existing lecturers, fellows, any contacts that you might have at the institution. For lectureships, it's also important to try to understand the funding landscape in the country where you're applying. Where might you apply for funding? Try to find also about the departmental strategy, including if there's been any changes since the pandemic. For example, how has the pandemic affected the university's appeal to international students? Try to work out the structure and content of the teaching on offer. How much is online? How do they support graduate students? Are they going through any process of adapting the curriculum in the context of looking at questions of decolonizing the curriculum? What do you want to ask your interviewers at this stage? How should you prepare and how should you present yourself? So thinking about presenting yourself, do remember that first impressions matter. Try to smile even if you're feeling incredibly nervous. Dress appropriately. We would say often smart casual or a suit, but do be comfortable. Make sure you're showing your communication skills. Make eye contact. Try to be positive and enthusiastic. Listen to the questions and clarify them if necessary. Structure your answers, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but don't try to memorize or be too robotic in your responses. Be specific and focus on your achievements. Some top tips for answers. Listen carefully to the questions and make sure you're answering the right one. It's okay to pause first. Make them a good length, not too short and not too detailed. We'd often say that 2 minutes is a good length. Try to stick to 2 or 3 points and try to impose a structure on your responses. Be specific, focus on outcomes and your personal achievements and giving enough detail so we can get a picture of you. When you've finished, stop talking. Make sure you decide when the answer is finished. Always think about what is unique to you and try to bring this across. So how can you be memorable? It's giving the detail of what your actual research and teaching and other experiences look like. Unstitch the key experience and look for those moments of those very specific elements of importance. If you give enough concrete detail for them to refer back to it and not just an overall impression, they'll see you as a unique candidate. So the detail communicates your competency. Of course, all that within the 2 minutes that we suggest for each answer. If you're just giving vague answers, they can become worried. You're also thematically bringing it all together and showing this trajectory toward independence as you've grown through your research career. For some questions where they want an example, the STAR technique can really help. For example, to talk about a particular challenge you've had with teaching as an example question. You need to spend the least time on the situation and the results because they are specific to that situation, but spend more time on how you reacted because you may be able to transfer those techniques to different situations in the future. Here's 2 answers to the question, what do you do with a weak student? Which do you think is more convincing? First, I tell them they need to put in more work and remind them of upcoming deadlines. Or, I had one project student who started arriving in the lab mid-morning and then disappearing by lunchtime. On the 3rd day of this, I asked if we could talk away from the other lab members. I asked how she was, and she told me her mother was seriously ill. The student could think of little else and was sleeping badly. She was getting behind on her reading, her essays, and her practical work. We discussed how she could explore her options. She decided to talk to her director of studies and to the counseling services and chose to take some time at home caring for her family members. When she came back the next year, she was much more focused and left with a high 2-1 and a place on a PhD program. So a presentation or a research job talk is often part of the interview process. So some tips for this. Find out about your audience. Make sure you're structuring it well, especially the shorter ones, and make sure the listener knows where you're at in the structure of your presentation so they can be signposted well. Speak to the department needs and balance your past and current and future research. Stay on time with not too many detailed slides. Practice, preferably with peers, colleagues, or a PI who can give feedback on the technical content. Listen carefully to the others' presentations so that you can assess your own strengths relative to them. So that question on, do you have any questions for us in an academic interview? It's not a last-minute exercise in gathering some more information about the job. You have to be careful that it doesn't sound selfish. Do you offer assistance with relocation expenses, or what are the arrangements for taking a sabbatical? And don't ask things that you could find out yourself. Your goal is really to show that I'm thinking about the things you want me to be thinking about. So be honest also with yourself. Does it affect whether you'd accept the job, or are you just asking for the sake of it? Some questions can be about research environment or ongoing research seminars, doctoral student support for training, that kind of thing. But it shows that you have your priorities in the right place. Remember that few interviews go 100% perfectly. Make sure that you know the time frame and you can follow up if necessary. Make a note of the interviewers' names and questions after the interview so you can refer back. Also, try to take some notes or try to think about what your impressions are of the post or of the people in the institution, if it's somewhere that you can see yourself working. Think about what you need if you get a job offer. We do have some information on negotiations and can help you with this as well. If you are unsuccessful, ask for feedback. You may get something. Interview blues are normal and do get support if you need it for this. And tell us what you were asked. We like to collect that information as well. One last thing in your preparation, try to think about where you are feeling the least confident, what you're hoping they won't notice, and what you're hoping they might not ask, and try to address these things head on. Some other ways we can help. I mentioned the Academic Interviews Skills Guide, which you can download from the Career Service website. You can also book a practice interview with us, a one-to-one appointment, which you can book on Handshake. We do again offer advice on negotiating after receiving an offer. The Professor is In is a good website if you do have an interview with a US institution. Thank you very much and good luck in your preparation.